I think we were not expecting the devastation we found when we arrived, and we hadn't realized just how serious the situation was. When we arrived, for example, we could not get to the actual pound. In 2017, when we assisted with the evacuation of the Los Barrios pound, there was only one road that was covered in water. But this time round, when we arrived, the whole area was flooded. And to actually arrive at the shelter, the pound itself, a number of us even had to swim to get there. The water was up to our waists, and there were vehicles stuck in the water that couldn't move. So it was a huge issue to actually get to the pound. And obviously the team, we had to divide ourselves into those going to the shelter and taking out the dogs, and those then getting the dogs from the shelter to the actual road, and then those taking the dogs to private kennels.
And I pose this to you as well, Lesley. What was that feeling like of having to assist? And I mean, you're dealing with animals who are going to react a certain way in certain situations.
Yeah, I think what we got in the morning was a call to action, and I think it's something that we're very good at. So we don't really stop to think, we just do. We just get up and go out there, and we just went. When we got there and we realised that the vehicles, the 4x4s that had very kindly come from Gibraltar, couldn't get through, it was just like, well, we have to get there, so let's go. And we did. We just went, we walked, we got up to our knees in water, then up to our waist in water, and then up to our necks in water. When we arrived there, and you could see, it was actually quite shocking to get there and see how high the water level was in the actual shelter. But they'd managed to move a lot of the dogs onto higher ground, and we're still doing that as we arrived. And we're looking to find ways to get the dogs out if there were vehicles that couldn't get in. But I think the feeling was when you're doing that and you're in the middle of it, you're working on adrenaline. You just keep going. You're just doing it because you know that it has to be done. I think it's afterwards when you get home and you sit down and think about the day that it hits more.
And of course, it's a very distressing time for the people there trying to help, but also for the animals as well. What kind of state did you find them in?
They were very distressed. The dogs were petrified. They were wet. They didn't know what was going on. They'd been taken from the actual pound to the an adjacent piece of land that was not flooded. So they were all tied, and they were being held by strangers. They were all in the same place. They were just, the fear was palpable. And a lot of them, they were extremely distressed. One of the dogs that we went to collect, who actually has a home and was going to travel to Germany on Friday, died. So it was just
Devastating.
It really was.
And this happened in a pound in Los Barrios, but there is a connection to Gibraltar. Some of those dogs that were in that pound came from Gibraltar.
Yes, a number of dogs are routinely, there's a lot of abandonment by people from Gibraltar or connected to Gibraltar in Spain, and primarily in the Los Barrios pound and in Prodea, an animal in lead in La Línea.
And there's been an outpouring of generosity from the community from across the border as well. Some £18,000 raised in your Just Giving page. So how will that money help?
So we left with a Just Giving page that had gone up really quickly by one of our volunteers, asking for around £2,000. And that's based on the knowledge that we knew that we would end up taking dogs into kennels, and there is a cost to that. So £2,000 would possibly have covered 10 to 15 dogs for a week in kennels. We go off, we spend the whole day there. When we come back, I think when we got back home, the target had reached 12,000. And I think, I can speak for us all, I think we all cried. It was so emotional to see how generous people had been. It was just amazing. And by the end of yesterday, I think it had reached £18,000. So, we needed time yesterday and today to process the generosity, the amazing generosity, the money that people had given us, and then decide what's the best way to spend that money. To understand that we have, I think our kind has around 23 dogs we've taken, and the cost for 23 dogs in kennels for a month is around £3,500. It's not a small amount of money. Add on top of that vets fees, they all have to see a vet, they all have to be vaccinated, and not include, when you include dogs, some of those dogs have health issues, so those all have to be paid for. So I thought, although £18,000 is a lot of money, it doesn't go very far.
The funds will also be obviously used for the dogs of SOS Pepe Los Barrios. We've been working with them now for about 5 years, and the funds will be used. The dogs are theirs, and obviously will be put to the use that they think is best. They are the ones on the ground, and we're here to assist them. And our understanding is that they want to relocate, so they are going to be petitioning to their government for assistance. So they've asked us to hold, obviously we will be to hold tight when we receive the funds, and they will be advising us and telling us where the money should go, in addition obviously to the care of the dogs.